Welcome in, everyone, to Beyond the Beat with 32 Beat Writers. My name is Zach Hyduk, and today I'm here with the illustrious Tyler Drake of ArizonaSports.com, Cardinals beat writer and editor over at ArizonaSports.com, as mentioned. You can also hear him, if you haven't checked it out already, at the at Cardinals Corner podcast, rather. If you're looking for him on Twitter, you can find him at TDrake4Sports. Tyler, how are you doing?
Hey, I'm doing all right. How are you doing, my friend?
I'm not doing too bad. I'm really excited to talk to you. You're their first kind of like beat writer post draft. So thanks for joining us. At this point, I think this is your third time being on the show here. So hopefully we kind of know what we're doing by now. I always try to read the intros, but honestly, I should have yours memorized at this point. So
hey, every time I come back, it looks like a new setup. So it looks like you're continually up in the game, man. So I'm glad to be a part of it.
Yeah, thanks. We're trying. We're doing pretty well. The last live stream went pretty well. And this time, obviously, as everybody can see, I am in my car in a parking lot in Maryland for what it's worth. But today we're talking Arizona Cardinals. And if you're watching this live, you should know that this will also be in podcast form. You can see that on the bottom ticker there. But yeah, we're talking Cardinals. So let's just, we'll mostly focus on the offensive guys this year. It seems to be what people are pretty interested in. And so with that, considering a quick recap of the draft, obviously everybody knows that you guys took Marvin Harrison Jr. at 4 overall. For what it's worth, I was hoping you guys would do that. It seemed to make the most sense. Whatever little rumors there were about replacing Kyler Murray never really made a lot of sense once he had come back from that injury last year. And then you got Trey Benson out of FSU in the 3rd. And then I don't remember, was Tip Ryman, was he in the 3rd or 4th?
Yeah,
one of those
3rd.
two.
I believe he was the 3rd.
Mostly blocking tight end, I believe. And you can tell us more about him if you want. But and then we got some questions about your wide receiver. I don't even know. I didn't honestly know much about this guy at UAB. Is it Tewan Palmer? Is that how you say
it? Tajon, I believe.
Tajon. Okay.
We'll meet him soon. I'll be able to give you the exact pronunciation, but I believe from what I've been told, that's where we're at.
Okay, sounds good. Yeah, a lot of names to learn here. But we talked about a lot of pass catchers, but just moving back up to the top of the draft, and you wrote a great article, by the way. So for everybody who doesn't know, you can check out Cardinals questions post NFL draft : is Michael Wilson the unquestioned wide receiver 2? That's an article that you wrote very recently. And so I guess that's the question I'm going to ask you. With that assumption, Marvin Harrison's the wide receiver 1, then what do you expect from him this year?
Yeah, I mean, Marvin, man, I really do think the sky's the limit. Just the fact of how he went through the draft process, how he skipped all of the draft work to better ready himself to get more rest, to better ready himself to when and if he hits that rookie wall, it's not going to be that massive drop off. So I really do think that it's not out of the question to think he can maybe hit 1,000 yards. And that's just based on the other weapons around this team too. You've got James Conner in the backfield. You just mentioned Trey Benson along with Michael Carter. You've got Trey McBride, who came into his own last year. McBride, but Marvin and the running game. And then if Michael Wilson can stay healthy, man, I posed that question, but I think that everybody knows, like, he is the guy. He's the leading candidate until, somebody else can take it from him or injuries pop up, which they did last year. But I think he really flashed last year enough to be that wide receiver too. But yeah, man, I think Marvin, I think they're going to feed him the rock. I don't think Kyler's really had a target quite like this. So I really think he's going to utilize him at this pro level.
Yeah, I'm really excited about that. And you've had a chance to get to talk to him. Is he excited to be part of the team?
Yeah. So I was actually in the draft or at the draft in Detroit, got to see all the sights and sounds. It was wild. It blew, in my opinion, blew Kansas City out of the water just from head to toe. I mean, people busting out of the seams, but actually seemed like it was like organized chaos almost. So very cool to see that. Cool NFL mecca of fans just getting together and partying. So that was cool. But yeah, talking with Marvin after the fact, we actually had Paris Johnson on my podcast on Cardinals Corner, and we asked him like, "Hey man, Marvin Harrison, have you talked to him a bunch?" And he goes, "Honestly, man, like when I got drafted by the Cardinals, I looked at him and said, 'You're going to be a Cardinal. Like you're next, man.'" And Marvin's like, I absolutely would love to be a Cardinal. And then so I actually was able to follow that up finally, like months later after talking to Paris and asked Marvin. He goes, "Yeah, I grew up watching Larry Fitzgerald. I just love what they're doing
Hmm.
there." Even before Paris got there, we both thought that would be a spot that we could really grow and really blossom. So I think he's really, really, really happy to be in that spot. And I think at the end of the day, everybody knew quarterbacks were going to go 1, 2, 3, especially
Right.
after Justin Fields got dealt. So I don't think I think he knew he wasn't going anywhere higher than 4. So why go out there and burn any kind of, extra days doing draft stuff when you can just prepare it and be ready for if you're going to Arizona or you're going to Los Angeles or you're going to one of those other needy teams. But
Right.
I mean, home run hit. It was the easiest pick for the Cardinals to make, but it was an easy home run as well. Like it was
Yeah.
the boring pick, but the right pick.
Yeah, it's a weird situation almost when you're kind of just expecting that this guy that you're taking, you'll almost be disappointed if he's not a Hall of Famer, Like, and you
Yeah,
mentioned Larry
yeah,
Fitzgerald, and like that's a lot of expectations to put on this guy, but you're right. When you have those kind of expectations, it's almost like, yeah, why bother? So I certainly didn't hold that against him. And it sounds like the team obviously didn't care either that he wasn't doing drills with, Romo Dunze, although we give him
right.
his due respect. But yeah, so I think you said obviously okay. So Harrison, wide receiver one. We talked a little bit about Michael Wilson. He was 565-ish yards, I think,
Yeah,
3 touchdowns over like 13 or 14 games.
yep.
Um,
Shoulder issue
and
that
then
kind
you
of
have
derailed
go
him a
ahead.
little bit. He just had a shoulder
Yeah,
issue that he missed a couple games with, but it also kind of lingered through the games he played and a couple of games he played through. So without that, I mean, we're looking probably at least another 100 with maybe another touchdown or two. So I think he's very much capable of being a wide receiver too. But yeah, keep on going, keep on going.
oh no, you're good. And that injury, since you mentioned it, is that a concern at all?
I don't think it is moving forward. I don't think it's something that's going to get him. I think he just needed rest, and towards the end of the season, you're not going to get any rest. So I think the offseason he should be healed up and should be ready to go.
Yeah, he was certainly the star of training camp last year, and you predicted that on the podcast, which it was really great. That's we bring back the people who happen to know what
There
they're
we
talking
go.
about, which is great.
There we
So,
go.
although everybody that we've had on, there's a reason they're on. So no disrespect to anybody else, but just real quick on Greg Dortch, sounds like you're slotting him in the
Oh
slot
yeah.
pretty much at this point,
Oh
right?
yeah. Yeah, easy. One of the easiest moves I think to make. I think he could also work on the outside if they needed him to, but I think he's their go-to slot guy. Rondell Moore's in Atlanta now. They just don't really have any other options, and I think he's their best option. He's shown time in and time out that he can perform, given the opportunity, given the chance, given the playing time. So I really think they lean on him a little bit more to really be that guy in the middle. And on top of that, I think he's still going to be a return guy. I know DJ Dallas, they brought him in so he could also maybe factor in there a little bit, but I think they really like what he brings to the table, both as a receiver in that slot position and as a return man too. So, everybody says like it's light the Dortch out here, and it's really true. Like the guy's got a lot of heart, and he plays through a lot of adversity of just sometimes I feel like he deserves way more playing time than he's getting, and he's still going out
Mm.
there and producing and having, the right head on his shoulders. So he's definitely a fan favorite out here, and I think he's really going to show a lot of improvement this year. Not improvement, but I think he's just going to show you a lot of what he's made of this year, getting more looks and not having to split time with a Rondell Moore or getting in there only because more injury-based things. Like this is his time to really show what he can bring to the slot at least.
Okay. Yeah, and the receiving stuff you mentioned is interesting because this year, and I've been mentioning it on our shows, like that's really going to matter this year. It's
Mhm.
going to be different with the fact that there's going to be, yeah, there will be 2 return guys, I think, back there, but you're going to see a lot more this year, and so those type of players, I'm interested to see how that goes because that's going to be important. Um, with that being said, we mentioned those guys. Is there any shot? We had a message on Twitter, and shout out to the guys who asked, by the way, Tyler, Cody, Dude, and Desi. I didn't write down their handles, but thank you to those guys who asked questions on Twitter. What do you think of Palmer then? 6 round picks, it's hard to make a roster anyways, but is that a guy that, like, if everything goes well for him, what do you see his role being?
I mean, I think he could fit in as an outside guy, maybe a come in and not split time, but get some time as maybe the wide receiver 2-ish position. I think he could also work as a slot guy, as a bigger slot guy. But right now, I would envision if everything goes well with him, he would be somebody that they would maybe throw at their opposite Marvin if they needed to just get a bigger body out there. I think he's what, like
Mm.
six, it's got to be like 6'2", I think, 6'1", 6'2", right around there. So I would say, it's going to be interesting to see how he can beat press. That's been a big thing I've seen is just him getting off man at the NFL level. That's something to watch. He's got a great catch radius, so I think he can make some really good contested catches out there and really shock some people. But it's interesting though, because the wide receiver room, you could still probably use a player or two to really kind of
Yeah.
shake things up. But as it stacks out, you've got Marvin, Michael, and Greg. That seems like a very solid trio. I think like I said, I think he could come in and get some reps maybe as a Michael Wilson 2.0, especially if Michael Wilson has to miss some time due to injury, which who knows if that happens or not. He could have a full year. Maybe that's not a thing, but I would look for him maybe filling in more as an injury guy, but it wouldn't shock me if he did come in and play a little bit based on what he can show at training camp. I mean, like we talked about last year with Michael Wilson, there was – everybody I think thought he would be somebody that they could rely on, but he really had that training camp to really show people like, hey, I'm ready to go. So it might come down to that similar thing with Palmer.
Yeah. Okay. We'll have to see how that plays out. And I think, we can talk about training camp and stuff. I'll ask about that in a little bit here. With talking pass catchers, we mentioned that you guys drafted Tip Ryman there. I think you said it was in the third, if I remember. Listening to your podcast, it sounded like you were assuming that he would mostly play a blocking role. He's very excited about that. Again, you guys should check that out, Cardinals Corner there. But we saw like a lot from Trey McBride, and you were on that pretty early. 800 yards, I think, 3 touchdowns, pretty productive for a tight end considering in the NFL. Is there any expectation? You've got Harrison. That should honestly, in my opinion, would help the offense. With the addition of Harrison, do you feel like that's an attainable goal? Was that a pretty high ceiling with Kyler? I think he had 2 plus 100-yard games over the back half of the season. I think those were his highest yardage games. Is he a favorite target? How do we see him? What's his role on the team? Give me a little bit more about your thoughts on him for this year.
Yeah, I think that's definitely an attainable goal. I mean, we also have to go back to the beginning of the year. He was really second on the depth chart behind Zach Ertz. Like, Zach Ertz was still a member of this team. So he took over, and he took over for the second half of the season and went from there. So getting a full season, getting a full offseason with Kyler, getting a full season with Kyler, I mean, it seems like that could be kind of a starting point from him from now on. Like 800 should kind of be the thing, especially just based on what this offense is. It's a run first, run heavy. They want to pound the football. They need to have tight ends out there. They love having 2 tight ends out there, especially with a guy named Tip. Like, I think they're really going to move this rock, and then they're going to find Trey to really break this game open on top of having Marvin. And like, you have all those weapons. You've got to put more guys on Marvin. You've got to make sure you've got somebody to fill in on the run game. Like, he's going to be open more times than not, and he's been working with Kyler all offseason. The dude just loves ball. He's excited to work under this regime. The way he came in the other day, you'd think we're getting ready for week 1, not for strength and conditioning program, just from how excited he was to be back in the building, be back with his players, be back and being able to be a leader at this point, on top of just learning more from the tight ends coach and knowing that he's not made it to the echelon. Like, he's still got a ways to go, and he's very much looking forward to learning how to do that. So I really do think like this is the very starting point for this new beginning of Trey McBride that really, I mean, he should continue to be a top tight end in this league, especially with a guy like Tip being that blocking tight end and taking maybe a little bit more of that workload away from him. But Trey also he loves blocking. He says it all the time. He loves to block, and Tip loves to maul people. So it's going to be really fun to see that kind of duo work out together. And also, I think Tip's going to shock some people with his athleticism as well.
Okay. Yeah, I know you mentioned that they were probably planning on using a lot of 12 personnel, which I think they did last year. I don't remember all the stats on that, but if I'm remembering correctly, 12 personnel, it's great formation to run out of when you got 2 guys like that. And then you draft a guy in the third in Trey Benson out of FSU, one of the favorites of a lot of people headed into the draft here. I'm just curious what you think that might look like, because we know that James Conner again, you're talking about, is a great leader for the team, very well respected. A lot of guys bring up his name when they're talking about people that they're, in conversation with on the team and things like that. How do you see that room? Because a lot of people are going to be very excited to see Trey Benson and what he might be able to bring to the table. And if they're going to be running a lot, is that going to be, a pretty heavily James Conner favored thing? And James Conner has never finished a season, as far as I'm aware, averages like 13 games. So what do you think that's going to look like at the beginning of the year and then maybe at the end of the year?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, for me, James Conner is the guy that's going to get the rock a lot. They are going to feed him early and often if he can handle it. He's one of the guys, they joked the other day, like how he was on the older side, but the way that he holds himself together and trains in the offseason and keeps his body right. Like there's no doubt that he could keep going at the same rate for multiple years. And yeah, obviously a couple games he's missed here and there each year, but I think at the end of the day, he's still very much the guy they want this ball to go through. With that being said, though, I think it's both Trey Benson and Michael Carter. Michael Carter, I think, did a lot just as a change of pace back last year and brings, a shifty kind of back. With Trey, I think very much if Connor needs a break, if he needs a blow, then it's going to be a Trey Benson who comes in and it continues to be that physical back who can also hit that home run shot. So I'm really, really interested. I know that I said on my podcast that Tip was my most intriguing member of the draft class, like of the later rounds, but Trey is right up there too, just because it's another step in the right direction of, hey, they know what they want to do. They want to run the rock. They want to get guys in there that if they've got to rotate guys in, they can step in and put this guy right there, and that can be James Conner 2.0. And so I think it's another thing, just like Palmer. We've got to see what he does at training camp, because if he can challenge a Michael Carter, challenge Amari DeMercado to really fight for that RB2 role, then I think things get a little more interesting. I think he flies on the fantasy radar a little bit more too. Like not only as a very valuable handcuff, but I think as a sneaky maybe flex play here or there.
Yeah, so it sounds like we expect Connor to be the guy, and that would make sense. And then, if anything, the opportunity for Trey Benson to really establish himself would take a good amount of work, which I'm sure he'll be putting in, but then also quite a bit, maybe it would take like an injury or something like that to Connor for him to get a serious role, which I suppose makes sense. Do you think they'll be extending Connor past this year? I think he's in the last year of his deal, if I'm correct.
He's one of him and Kaiser White. Those are the two guys that they should be going to the negotiation tables and getting that done like right now. That's my own personal opinion. They're just both leaders on both sides of the football. I think last year you saw that to a T. I mean, Kaiser White got hurt and he still led the team in tackles for the rest of the season. I think he only played 11 games or something like that. And James Conner even on the defensive side, it's like, yeah, you see the guy like James Conner working, it makes you want to work harder. Like those are the guys that Jonathan Gannon and Monty Osford, this is their foundation. These are the kind of guys they need to keep around. And that's why they're stuck around. I mean, Kaiser should easily be extended again. And James Conner's another one where I think it's just no-brainers for what the mold that this organization wants now, the type of player mentality. Like these guys live and breathe exactly what JG and Monty want.
Yeah, because I think some of the assumption, and maybe my assumptions incorrectly so, was that, all right, they drafted Benson, and then the likelihood that they keep Connor around is pretty small. And I mean, I don't know what the likelihood in percentage points would be, but it sounds like it's greater at least than I initially thought it was. So,
well, and I guess here's the thing too, is like let's take the DJ Humphrey situation. I mean, there's an avenue where if he doesn't get hurt last year at the end of the year with a torn ACL and can't really come back, who knows when he's going to make it back this year? Who knows if he's really gone? Who knows if they figure out a way to keep him? So it could be a similar thing. Like if it's a necessity, if James Conner goes down and it's one of those injuries where, hey, not only does he go down, but Trey Benson shows that he can be the next guy, you might have to change the thinking a little bit. But in my eyes, I think you have to extend Connor. And hey, if Trey Benson does his thing, that's even better. I mean, you've got your guy locked up, and you've got the heir apparent right behind him, ready to go. So it's definitely something that could easily change from a week 5 to a week 14. Who knows? I mean, it's the NFL, and just like I said with the DJ comparison, anything can happen and make any kind of trajectory either increase or decrease on the flip of a coin.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that'll be interesting to monitor then, as you said. That probably, if they're trying to work something out, they're probably trying to do that now. So, overall, excuse me, on the offense, we talked prior to last year about offensive coordinator Drew Petzing coming in. I think it was his first year actually coordinating an offense. Did you like what you saw from him? Do you feel like he's going to be able to utilize these guys in the right manner going forward? And then my kind of question with Harrison and Murray and then Benson, it's not like you have an amazing, like crazy studded roster all over the offense, but you have some good pieces, some really, really good pieces. Do you think that they can be a top 10 offense even, or is that a lofty goal? What do you think?
Well, for Petzing, I would say this. Petzing, I thought, really killed it in his first year. Obviously, there was some areas where they needed to get some improvement. I think from a talent aspect, I think getting a bigger outside wide receiver is going to do wonders for this offense. I think having a bigger blocking tight end who is, obviously Jeff Swaim, I thought did a great job before he even got injured, but I think having a more athletic tip, a 2.0 Swaim, if you will, like that's only going to boost it. You've got another running back in the corral for those guys to utilize. So I really do think with what Petzing does, like he's very much a traditional guy, but he does weave in these creative kind of plays here and there that really keep defenses on their toes, I think. So, I definitely do think like he wasn't a name that was mentioned or anything, but Gannon really said like this offseason, a big part of it was making sure his coaching staff was intact. And one part of me really thinks that Petzing probably had some interest from other teams. That's just my own opinion, just from what he brings to the table. The way that he just holds himself already, like the guy very much seems like he's on a trajectory to keep going forward, going up. So on that side, on the coaching side, yeah, I was very impressed with Petzing, what he did in year one. Obviously, ways to go still, but for a year one, like I was very surprised from what I saw. Just
Yeah.
traditional but creative. That's what they wanted to do. There's no more. You can't just step back there and shotgun and throw the ball. And for him to really dive in and make Kyler change his footwork and really kind of take another look at the offense as a whole really speaks volumes to what he does as a coach behind the scenes with players. I mean, getting a guy like Kyler, who was drafted number 1 overall, to change something up about his, little tendencies of what he does, that goes a long way, I think, in just showing you what type of coach is in the building. But on the offensive side, there's a really good chance if they can really iron out this offensive line, get that left guard just solidified. I think Evan Brown's a good candidate, and obviously John Gaines is a guy that I think could maybe be in there. It could be. I really do think it could be a top 10 offense. And the reason why it's not just the Marvin addition, it's not just Trey McBride's, up and coming, exposure. It's the ability that they had to run the ball those last 4 weeks. I mean, that was, I feel like Kyler really was able to knock off the rust, and that offense looked like how it's supposed to look moving forward. I mean, they led the league, I believe, in the last 4 weeks on the ground. So that's what they want to do. And that's kind of what I think this next transition is they can be that consistently moving forward. So if they have that kind of run game, they should easily be a top 10 offense, because if you can run that rock, it's going to open up all these other avenues for a Marvin Harrison Jr. to blow the doors off, or a Trey McBride to blow the doors off, or even a sneaky Trey Benson or a James Conner out of the backfield even, or Michael Carter, or, all these other names that Michael was like, there's just so many names now that it's almost like this should be the standard. The top 10 offense should be the standard for these guys now. And it's crazy to say that going into year 2 of this rebuild, this reset, but I think they really, upped the ante and really sped up this timeline.
Yeah. Last year was such a wild year with their whole. I mean, you mentioned Drew Petzing and the offense, like with Josh Dobbs. I mean, he got Josh Dobbs a job up in Minnesota for a little while. So for what it's worth there, but and then the run game. I guess they're coming from mostly like kind of a Stefanski style. I don't know if it's exactly styled the same way, but from that tree at least, anyways. So I'm really interested. The running game, as you mentioned, over the past 4 weeks, it sounds like we're really going to be expecting 12 heavier personnel and a lot of maybe some play actions coming off of that. What pretty familiar in the league, I guess, in a lot of ways now that everybody would know. But last year, so if they are a top 10 offense, last year we asked you, hey, you taking the over or under here on their win total? Not that I'm not telling anybody to necessarily go out and bet based on this, but you were correct last year. You called the under of the 4.5. At least it was that way in September when we recorded. and they went 4. So we were just under by that half a game. Right now, based on what I was looking at, they are at like 6.5. So would you think like, okay, yeah, we're in a tough division here, but if we got a good offense, we got a hopeful Hall of Famer here if we're lucky on at wide receiver, like 6.5 games over, under, where are you at?
So this is what I've been saying. Depending on what happened with the draft, they had to come out with a wide receiver. They had to get another defender. They had to get these, some top tier talent. They couldn't walk away with more draft picks. Them checking that box, definitely, it's gonna be close. I kind of went through the teams a couple days ago again just to kind of relook at what they've lost, they've gained, kind of see, and it's gonna be a difficult slate. I mean, the Lions are in there. You've still got the NFC West. There's a couple other games where I'm like, oh man, that'd be tough. Like Buffalo Bills, I believe are in there, but I mean, they're kind of, I don't know right now with the Bills, but that's neither here nor there. But for me, I don't think it's out of the question to see them double their wins to go from 4 to 8. And might sound crazy. It might sound ridiculous. Year 2, they only won 4 games last year, but the way they ended some of the wins they got, I mean, the way and we don't even count the Dallas wins, but just the wins they got under Kyler Murray, the way they ended on the run game, the way that this team really is a team there's a different feeling in this locker room, different feeling in the media room. Everything just feels different. There's more of a cohesion going on. I think over, 7, 8, that's probably in the range that I'm at right now. Obviously we'll have to see how things shake out in training camp, injuries, but right now I would go if I'm doing it, I'd go over 6.5. And it sounds a little wild to say, but I think that's where I'm at right now.
No, I like it. You were right last year. So everybody listening or watching, do with that information what you will. Regarding what's coming up here in the near future, if I'm correct, we got rookie mini camp coming up this Friday, and then mandatory mini camp for everybody, I think, begins on the 11th. But obviously you're going to be around there. What are you looking for? Is there anything like specific that we should be watching for, or should we just enjoy watching Marvin Harrison do his thing? Or what are you looking for specifically?
Well, definitely that's definitely I think you could probably, everybody's going to be watching that. You can definitely probably see multiple clips of me of him getting him catching footballs, and that's everybody's going to be looking at that. But I'd say Max Melton, if he can maybe, challenge somebody to be a starting cornerback, maybe that's a CB2 to start out, or CB1. They have Sean Murphy-Bunting now, so I think he's definitely going to be starter, but exactly where that's going to be, I'm not sure. And really, how do the cornerbacks shake out behind the trio of returning guys in Keitrell Clark, Starling Thomas, Garrett Williams? Like, I think Garrett Williams is their starting nickel moving forward, but who knows? Does somebody challenge? And I think Starling's more of an outside guy personally. And can Keitrell get back to a consistent starting basis? And that's more kind of in the weeds. But I think from there, Trey Benson, I mean, like you said, there's potential there. I think watching what he does and early on and getting into training camp, and when he gets in those competitions with Michael Carter and with these other guys, and maybe even just seeing how he stacks up with James Conner, Michael Wilson, I think just seeing kind of him getting that NFL offseason, and same thing with Trey McBride, and seeing what next steps they can take and what if they look more like NFL, caliber starters. And I think they do, but I'd be really interested to see that. And obviously, I think just seeing Kyler Murray coming back in, getting that full offense, getting that full offseason with this offense, with being able to, pick brains of other guys and getting out there on the field with a Michael Wilson or a Trey McBride, like how much growth has he gotten? And that sounds kind of weird to say for a Kyler Murray who's been in the league since 2019, but how much more has he gotten better? Like, it's going to be big. How he's going to have a chip on his shoulder. I mean, I think a lot of people think that they could have gone farther if he was healthier for the full year. So definitely going to be looking at that. And then, offensive line, left guard, who's going to take that spot? And the other thing, I don't know if this is going to be a big deal. Yelda Furlholtz, I think, takes down and keeps that center spot, but Evan Brown has a lot of center reps. So I'd be interested to see if he maybe at least challenges or at least secures that backup spot. But as I said, too, John Gaines is another guy. Is he healthy enough? What does he look like after that knee injury? Can he get that left guard spot? Can he fight for a backup center spot? So, yeah, I think it's a lot of names I gave you, but I think that's kind of where I'm looking at right now.
All right. Yeah, no, a lot of stuff to pay attention to here as we get in through the off season. We got some spots of like a lot of activity happening and then some dead spots mixed in there. So be watching out for that come Friday for everything from Tyler. Tyler, thanks for joining us, man. But before I let you go, just tell everybody where they can find you.
Yeah, definitely. ArizonaSports.com. We actually have an Arizona Sports app if you want to download it. The radio station 98.7. You can hear me jump on there for a couple segments here and there. On my podcast, Cardinals Corner, my co-host Lauren Koval and I break it down usually weekly. If there's breaking news, we'll jump in there here and there. But you can find that on YouTube, everywhere you listen to podcasts. But yeah, ArizonaSports.com. I'll have a lot more of these questions that you mentioned earlier. I'll have a lot more of those questions kind of throughout the week into next week. I think I've got about 6 or 7 more. So yeah, just trying to look at it a little bit, trying to, I guess, bridge the gap of the slow times, getting back into the swing of things. But honestly, the NFL season doesn't end. So if you want to look at all the draft coverage I had too, you can find that on YouTube. You can find that on my social medias at TDrake for Sports, Instagram, Facebook, X. So yeah, everywhere, TikTok even.
All righty. Sounds good. Well, hey, thanks again for everybody joining us. Make sure to check Tyler's stuff out at ArizonaSports.com and his podcast, like he mentioned, Cardinals Corner. Don't forget to check us out on our website as well, 32beatwriters.com. For Tyler Drake, for the full 32 Beat Writers staff, thank you for joining us, and we will see you next time.